Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm EP314. Ukraine is not the only country awaiting funds being held up in US Congress. 3 tiny Pacific Island countries known as the Freely Associated States, or Palau, Micronesia and the Marshall Islands, have been waiting for the renewal of a small but important agreement called the Compact of Free Association. The agreement for the Marshall Islands and Micronesia expired in September last year, and Palau's will expire in September this year. We ask why these agreements are so important and what their delay means for the region, Taiwan and the United States. Joining us today are Yeh-chung, National Chengchi University College of International Affairs Vice Dean, and Vincent Chao, Taipei City Councilor from the DPP. A very warm welcome to the show. The Compacts of Free Association gives the US military unilateral defense access to each freely associated state. This means the US can deny access to a marine territory roughly the breadth of continental America. In exchange, these countries have their defense needs provided for, and citizens of these countries can live and work in the US as residents. Funds under the association also go toward education and other government services. So, let me come to you first, Professor Liu. Why is this agreement advantageous for the US?
Yes, as we can see from the history and also from the locations of those island countries, it is quite important for the United States to have the access to that part of the world, especially located in the Pacific, because we all know that in recent years, the rivalry between China and the United States has heightened over the years. We can rewind a little bit. If we look at the Second World War, the Pacific War was so serious. During that period of time, the United States actually tried very hard to defeat the Japanese army on those small islands so that the US and the Allies can get closer to the Japanese soil to force Japan to stop the war.
Then it was all about getting to Japan, as you said, for the US. Now, what's the strategic consideration?
Yes, the most important, of course, the competitor for the United States in that part of the world is China. And especially if we look into the map, we can see that it is not only the first island chain. The second island chain is so important, and many of those island countries are actually located on the second island chain or very close to the second island chain.
Okay, right. And Vincent, why do these nations, especially Palau and Marshall Islands, desperately need the association to be funded?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Professor Liu said, these are relics of the Second World War. I mean, after the Second World War, the U.S. entered this trusteeship agreement with many territories in the Pacific, including the ones we're talking about today, Palau, Marshall Islands, Micronesia. And so this trusteeship agreement ended up in the 1980s, I think the early 1980s, evolved into what we call this COFA agreement, this Compact of Free Association. And whereas the U.S. would take responsibility on matters of defense, on several, including sovereignty affairs, but also provide payments. Initially, I think they were 15-year payments, and now they've gradually evolved to 20-year payments to these countries to support their economic development. And so right now, what's happening is that these countries, these payments are important to countries. I mean, these are small countries of just a couple of tens of thousands of people. I mean, they're economically reliant in many senses, not only on the COFA agreements themselves, but on U.S. support, whether military support, whether they're bases in region and so forth. And so speaking of Palau and the Marshall Islands, I mean, these are diplomatic allies of Taiwan, so they matter to us as well.
Yeah.
And so what these allies are seeing right now, certainly what all 3 countries are seeing right now, is that there is a growing awareness of the strategic importance of these countries being located in the Pacific. China has growing ambitions in the Pacific, and China is pretty intent on working through various methods, including economic support, including financial support, on pulling these countries away from this orbit with the United States that they've traditionally had since the Second World War. And so COFA, this lack of passage, this inability to renew this 20-year COFA agreement has consequences, not only for U.S. security in the region, for these countries themselves, but also for Taiwan. So this is one of the few cases, I think, where we see a direct relationship between the United States and these countries in the Pacific having a potential adverse outcome for Taiwan's diplomatic allies.
Run us through a little bit of the process of COFA in terms of what should have happened. Where was it meant to be agreed through Congress, and where has been the holdups?
These aren't huge numbers when it comes to the United States. I mean, this is, I think, over $7 billion over a 20-year period.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it's...
And I understand, actually, that most of that is roll-on money. The new money is about $2.3 billion.
That's right. It's about 40 million per country per year. So, I mean, it's not a huge figure, but nevertheless, it is a figure that needs to be passed by Congress. So what's happened is that the U.S. has actually finished negotiating with these countries. So they've got this agreement, basically agreed to in principle by the two sides. All that's left right now is for Congress to appropriate the funding. Right. But Congress hasn't been able to appropriate funding, namely because they've been unable to agree which funding mechanism it should fall under. So initially they thought they could put it under NDA, the National Defense Authorization Act. But then I think several members of Congress demanded offsets. So they said that if you want to spend this money, you got to save money elsewhere. They couldn't find offsets. And then they decided to put this under various legislation that ultimately Congress has not passed. And so we do see a hyper-partisan Congress right now in the United States, simply because the margins are so small between Republicans and Democrats. And as a result, we've seen several major pieces of legislation, not just the Ukrainian legislation, but also this COFA agreement, essentially held up and stuck in limbo. So I guess the hope is right now, particularly amongst these Pacific countries, is that the U.S. Congress can deal with this as a matter of priority and urgency, pass the funding mechanism, and ultimately allow these COFA agreements to be renewed for another 20 years.
Yeah. Professor Liu, Vincent laid out there how strategically important this is for that these islands are, these nation states are for the US, obviously important for Taiwan as well in terms of any invasion by China to basically still allow the US to get across, as you mentioned, the island chains from the third island chain to the second island chain, and then to Taiwan's being in the first island chain. So as Tsurangul Whipps Jr., the president of Palau, has said in interviews, you know, is the Pacific just simply being taken for granted?
Yes, I think for many countries in this part of the world, maybe we didn't pay too much attention to the South Pacific for decades. However, when Biden came in as the president of the United States, when it comes to the COFA agreement, I would say the Biden administration actually demonstrated very serious attention to this part of the world. For example, he actually named Joseph Yung to be the special envoy to lead the negotiation with the three countries. However, as opposed to what U.S. endeavor was, the Chinese part, they also heightened the importance of this part of the world. So last year, they actually named a special envoy to be in charge of the Pacific Island countries' affairs. And it is in the state level, not only the MOFA level. So the U.S. part, as we can see, the Biden administration, Joseph Yung is actually a State Department level senior official. So many people began to wonder if the United States cannot not only passing the bill, but also appointing a very permanent position to be in charge of those affairs, then that would be a pity, especially when we are having the Ukraine war right now and also the conflict in the Middle East. If the United States cannot continue to demonstrate its willingness to help those countries defend themselves, then that will be a big problem.
All right, okay. Voice of America first reported about the letter from Palau's president, Tsurangul Whipps Jr., to U.S. senators, to an unnamed U.S. senator. In it, he says, China suggested severing ties with the U.S. and Taiwan in exchange for economic gains, including filling every hotel room and a $20 million annual investment in a customer service center. Now, I spoke to Cleo Paskal, a senior non-resident fellow of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, earlier today to find out what a possible scenario of Chinese rather than US access to these countries would mean. Cleo also told me about the attempts to hurt President Tsurangul Whipps Jr.'s chances in the November election. Take a look.
So this is a zone that's functionally between Hawaii and the Philippines and links up to Guam. So it becomes very difficult for the U.S. to get across that whole zone. And it doesn't have to be the scary magic words of military base. If you just have, for example, that dual-use Chinese fishing fleet all over those waters, they're already tracking where the cables are, the undersea cables are. They certainly know where the good ports are. They have critical backbone in the infrastructure on ground. Huawei systems are in Palau, for example. So it could be a very easy kill switch to make getting across suddenly extremely difficult, something that really hasn't been gamed by the US military at all. And it leaves two pieces of the United States, Guam and the Commonwealth of Northern Marianas, hanging out in the off the coast of Asia with very little way for any resupply to get to them, let alone get to Taiwan or Japan or South Korea. So this is a very big strategic goal for China, to put US in that position where it cannot defend or resupply pieces of critical architecture, not only for US defense, but for free and open Indo-Pacific.
Cleo, the letter that the Palauan president, Surangul Whips Jr., wrote to Congress, can you tell us how China is taking the release of that letter?
Elements within Palau who want to distort the narrative, hurt President Whips in his upcoming election, have distorted the content of the letter to make it sound like he himself was threatening the United States. And if you look at the headlines in some of the Palauan media, the message that they're trying to say is, that, Whips is he coercing or trying to threaten the U.S. by saying, if you don't give us what we want, we'll ditch Taiwan. Well, as Taiwan knows, there's been a very strong relationship between President Whips and Taiwan. He went with the American ambassador to Taipei very soon after COVID allowed that to be possible. He is a strong vocal defender of the importance of democracy in Taiwan and what it means for the region. And so this is just really PRC political warfare operations designed to damage a candidate that has been standing up for both his people in the negotiations with the US, and very effectively. He's done everything right, but also stood up for the relationship with Taiwan.
That was Cleo Paskal, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, speaking to me earlier today. Now, the promise of China filling every Palau hotel room was actually fulfilled nearly a decade ago. To find out what happened and to get a perspective from on the ground, I spoke to local journalist Kambes Kesolei, the editor at Tia Belau. He speaks to me from Koror in Palau this morning. Take a look.
Within a span of 5 years, the share of Chinese visitors to Palau was 1.2%. In 2010, and by 2015, that share of Chinese visitors grew to 54%. That's how drastic it was. And during that time, during the boom years, hotel rooms were filled. Boat transportation were booked. We had flights from Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, all coming to Palau with multiple flight schedules a week, bringing more tourism. And even the diving spots, when you go out on the reef area, in one diving areas, there were so many tourism boats. And when you take your scuba tank and down below, then you can also see so many divers down below. It was just so crazy. It has never been seen before, that kind of surge from tourism.
How do you think China, who's promising once again to fill hotel rooms, every hotel room, how is that being received?
When the reason that the Chinese tourism went down was there was this belief that the Chinese government started weaponizing tourism. So they come in, they invest some money into the economy, they fill up hotel rooms, and then they remove themselves from the economy. And that's what happened. We have these hotels with idle hotel rooms. There's no customers. The boats are parked at the dock without any business. And so that's what happened. And we were trying to get that back up again when we were met with COVID-19, which really made matters worse. But I was looking at the the tourist data for 2023 and this past January, the Chinese are coming back strong, very strong. So last year, they were the biggest group of visitors coming to Palau, just edging Taiwanese visitors.
Do Palauans think of the Chinese as being an economic savior?
I can maybe count maybe 5 big multi-million hotel and resort development projects. And these were the Chinese investors were part of this project. And they come in and do this big elaborate ceremony as a groundbreaking ceremony. But none of those 5 hotel projects has materialized. So the people would look at them and say like, so what happened? There's that part of the public that is very skeptical when the Chinese come in and say and promise that, oh, we're going to bring millions of dollars in investment to the islands. And then there is a part of the population that say, look, we also have an experience with these Chinese people, and they help us establish our business, our dreams.
How about Taiwan's support? And how is that viewed by ordinary Palauans?
Taiwan has a very strong support from the Palauan citizens. And as we are speaking, I think there are maybe around 50 Palauans in Taiwan at this moment getting their university education. And about the same number or even more have received their have received their degrees in Taiwan University and have returned home to contribute to the national development. Taiwan continued to support Palau's development in terms of its national development goals, in terms of strengthening the island's food security through technical assistance in agriculture development. They also have helped Palau connecting roads from the villages out to the main road. If you ask a Palauan, any Palauan, they have a story to tell you about a close relative who went for medical care in Taiwan, like myself. But not only that they send that Taiwan sent medical teams to Palau. I think this is not about only treating medical ailments or something, but at a deeper level, when a person or a family is helped when they don't know what to do, when this relationship helps people to cure themselves, to heal themselves, to bring them back again strong and to contribute to their family's well-being, it only strengthens the bonding between these two people and the two countries.
That was journalist Kambes Kesolei speaking to me earlier today from Koror in Palau. Now, as Kambes Kesolei explained, Palau has been in this position before. Let's take a look at the inbound Chinese tourists to Palau. We can see here, starting in 2011, Chinese tourist numbers started doubling to 1,656, then in 2012 to 3,715, and then in 2013 almost tripling to 9,357, and in 2014 more than doubling to over 21,000, and finally in 2015 more than quadrupling 4 times to over 91,000. So, Professor Liu, tell us what China intended to do back then and exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yes, as we can see from all the numbers, we all know that Beijing actually has the ability to direct the flow of Chinese tourists by issuing its so-called approved destination status, the ADS, to a given country, so that the tourists from China can have this kind of package deal in those given countries. So in the case of Palau, there's no exception. China used this. It is, I would say, China is utilizing this way of dealing with the government in Palau, if not weaponizing it. In November 2017, Beijing ordered for tour operators to stop sending groups to the islands, and that actually hurt local economy in Palau.
Right.
And
why did they do this?
I believe they are using that as a way of economic coercion against the government, because the Palau government is so close to Taiwan. If they are questioning the relationship between Palau and Taiwan, the history between our two countries actually can be dated all the way back to 1999. After Palau got its sovereign state status in 1904, the Taiwan government actually established formal diplomatic ties with Palau in 1999. So it is more than 25 years close relationship across two countries. So for the Chinese part, of course, in the very beginning, they are trying to strive and compete with Taiwan over legitimacy, trying to squeeze out Taiwan from that local international community in South Pacific. However, in recent years, we can clearly see that China's ambition is way more than that. China right now is actually competing with the United States in that part of the world.
Okay. China has successfully leveraged economic incentives to encourage, most recently, the Solomon Islands and Nauru to break off diplomatic relations with Taiwan in favor of establishing ties with China. As a result, Taiwan now maintains only 3 allies in the Pacific: Palau, the Marshall Islands, and Tuvalu. During some of President Tsai Ing-wen's tours to Taiwan's Pacific allies in 2017, 2019, she inspected Taiwan-established agricultural organizations in Palau, acknowledging their role in transferring Taiwan's technology to these allies. Let's take a look.
我们驻帛琉的技术团，我们的历史比我们的驻馆还要久。我们从1985年就开始了，技术团先一步到帛琉来。 台帛之间能够有稳固的邦谊，技术团的功劳是当之无愧。
And Professor Liu, let's talk about a bit more about what is the basis of the relationship between Taiwan and Palau. For you, if you could summarize for us, you know, why is it so strong? We do hear and we do understand that the relationship is very strong.
Yes, I think for the people-to-people interactions between Palau and Taiwan, that is close in the sense that there are so many Palauan students studying in Taiwan. Actually, inside and outside classroom, I have met several of them, and we benefited from each other's background and also knowledge about the local communities. So this is quite important. And second thing I would add to this people-to-people interaction is the government from Taiwanese side actually would like to seriously provide some public goods in local community. Not only the agriculture thing, but also the educational programs, as we have talked about. And also, there is one other issue can be added into this equation. That is the Aboriginals' interactions between Taiwan and those communities in Palau. Those are very, very good. Maybe this kind of interactions may not immediately translate it into political dividends. However, over time, I believe this is the ties that bind people together between two countries. As for the government-to-government interactions, as President Whips just mentioned a couple of days ago, culture, democracy.
Okay, so Vincent, and the President says that Chinese businesses and officials have approached him again and said, once again, we can prop up your economy. So, you know, 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, he visited Taiwan. He said in a very famous speech now, you don't beat your wife to get her to love you, right? So how vulnerable, I guess what I'm saying, after COVID, after the Chinese bust, COVID, how vulnerable is Palau, or do you believe that it's strong?
I'm not sure that was the perfect analogy, but you know, I think the fact of the matter is that it's a cautionary tale. I mean, if you look at the boom and bust of Chinese tourism, it shows that, you know, things can come, but it can also easily be taken away for economic purposes, political purposes, and elsewhere. I think what Palau is looking forward is economic reassurance. I mean, tourism is important, but it's not the only industry, right? COFA is important. You know, the U.S. kind of presence on Palau is important. There's also other fishing, other maritime industries also involved. So I think, you know, China can offer one thing, but they can't offer everything. And so I think our role right now as Taiwan, working with the U.S. to ensure that Palau feels reassured, economically reassured. And COFA is one way to get there. But like I said, Taiwan as a country should also be thinking and doing more with Palau. So let me sort of put it this way. Palau faces elections, presidential elections. Serangoon Whips was elected a couple of years ago on a platform that was friendly towards Taiwan. But you can never rule out the possibility that one day, and this was a candidate, I think the last time around against Serangoon Whips was somebody that was friendlier towards Beijing. I think it was a member of their parliament that was seen as having quite close ties with Beijing. So if you can't beat China, I mean, things will naturally gravitate. So I do think that we are sort of in a battle against time, in a battle against space, and we have to be able to show effectively that this relationship pays off. So China knows that, and this is where they've had successes in the past, including other Pacific allies, to show that, you know, we can pump millions of dollars in as long as the Chinese are able to make the people believe that this is what they're willing able to do, then that would lead to an adverse consequence for Taiwan. So we do have quite a lot of work ahead of us, and I'm sure, absolutely certain, that our foreign ministry is looking at this very seriously and thinking about new and creative ways how to maintain and strengthen our relations with Palau.
Okay. Professor Liu, very final thoughts from you.
Yes, I think for that, I agree with Vincent that we need to collaborate with the local communities in Palau for a couple of reasons just laid out by Vincent. I think one goal is quite clear. We need to collaborate with Palau to make it transform into a resilient only democracy, but a resilient economy. This is quite important because, as we can see, it is not only that we are sending fish to them, we are providing fishing poles to them. That is quite important. So we need to collaborate hand in hand for the future.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll have to wrap it up there. Professor Yeh-chung and Vincent Chao, thank you so much for joining Talks today.
Thank you.
If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.